A very good morning to one and all. Welcome to Digital Money 2020. Let us start with our fireside chat, placing Indian payments landscape on the global level. I'll start by introducing our moderator for the conversation, Mr. Naveen Surya, founder and director, Soham Bharat Digital Payments and chairman, FinTech Convergence Council. Now, introducing our esteemed speaker for the chat, Shri P. Vasudevan, Chief General Manager, Department of Payment and Settlement Systems, Reserve Bank of India. Mr. Sameer Nigam, Founder and CEO of PhonePe. Welcome, sir. I would like to hand over the conversation to Mr. Surya to please take it forward.
Thank you very much. So it's really a pleasure to be part of this conference. It's like over a decade old, and I've been part of every year. So it's always like a nostalgic for me to be part of this conference. And I'm sure it's the same feeling at RBI because I was just talking to Sir Vasudevan Sirji that this is a every year there has been a very active support and participation from RBI, and this is a one event that everybody looks forward to for it's also like an indirect, informal report card for all of us. We all want to look at and crystal gaze at what we did right, what we didn't do right, what we were expecting from, let's say, policymakers and regulators. Well, we tell it, but regulators also tell us what more we can do and achieve, all of us as an ecosystem. So before I get into the formal session, I want to take this opportunity and invite Vasudevanji to kind of give us an address, small 5 to 10 minutes, basis his convenience and a schedule, to kind of take us through what does he think where we are as an industry we should look forward to from here in at least next 12 months before we meet again the same conference. Sir, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Naveenji. Nice to be part of the same panel discussions with Mr. Sameerji as well. It's a pleasure to be part of this, I think, 13th edition of digital money that the Payments Council of India and IAMAI have been bringing out. And I do understand that this year there have been significant number of registrations. I was told by Mr. Gaurav Chopra a little while earlier that we have crossed 1,750 registrations with maybe 10% of them from international jurisdictions as well. So that really gives us the good feeling in terms of India having a lot of systems and thoughts which can be shared with everyone across the globe. And nothing better than actually looking at what are all the benefits that this event can give us. I am seeing actually a very action-packed schedule with a number of topics lined up, including some of them quite interesting in terms of outcomes that they are going to give us. Because here is something which we are not looking at as a report card in terms of the present year. We are looking at something for the future. So it would be always a open-ended session in terms of inputs coming in from, and we are very glad to actually use our learnings from the past as also unlearn from some of the things which probably have not happened the way we wanted to or the industry expected to, using that to actually guide the entire set of activities for the next decade plus. In fact, whenever we are setting up these platforms, we are not looking at a couple of years hence, we are always looking at a couple of decades hence, because once we bring in a system, you would have seen it's very difficult to exit as well. So while we are in, it's always nice to actually come in with strong foundations and good systems which can help the everyone go forward. I am actually also happy to see the guiding tracks. 4 R's have been put as the guiding tracks. Those things are all very well thought of. Of course, as we maybe look into the present topic, I have my own R's to add as well. So we will also try to use many R's to raise the bar for all of us and to the globe as well. Because when we look at payment systems, typically we are looking at them as a public good institution. So if India has reaped the benefits and we are now moved from being one of the best to the best in the globe in terms of retail payment systems, so let us use this opportunity to make this public good be leveraged and used by the global community as well. And not only India will benefit, but everybody will benefit and the world will be a better place. So I am looking forward to interesting thoughts coming out of this event, and I wish the organizers, speakers, participants, and everyone involved in this conference a wonderful wonderful time. And I also like welcoming any suggestions and inputs that come out of this event to be sent across to us in Reserve Bank. We will take it with whatever pinch of salt, sugar, honey, etc., depending on what is our capability. And please be rest assured that it will be all for the good of the ecosystem. So I appreciate your point, Naveenji, that the last decade has been really very interesting for the payment space. In fact, I have also been part of this for quite some time. And if I see some of the journey or milestones that we have achieved in the payment system so far, there have been like significant points I can highlight. For example, right from setting up of the Institute for Development Research in Banking Technology in 1996. In fact, they set up the communication backbone, that is Infinet. They also brought out the messaging solution, that is SFMS, which typically is very good for the RTGS and NEFT systems. And we have the Board for Payment and Settlement Systems in RBI, which is chaired by the governor, and the deputy governors are all members, set up in 2005 to guide the payment system development in the country. 15 years have passed now. Plus, we have institutions like Clearing Corporation of India, 2001. Then, of course, now IFTAS has been set up to take over the cloud and other activities in the payment space. We have Rebit to guide us in supervision. So there have been these institutions that have also been set up, and they have guided the activities very well. And we cannot forget the UIDI-led Aadhaar project as well, which has also helped us move into the authentication and identification space for the customers. All these initiatives, if you see, have taken a little bit of time to be accepted, appreciated, and implemented, but they have actually facilitated the smooth uptake of our payment system. And these are actually the interesting points which are coming out in our discussions when we have the industry, not only in India, but outside. Many jurisdictions are actually very interested to come and learn from us. We always tell them that, Sirji, it actually takes 1 or 2 decades to put these things in place, not just 1 or 2 years. While we will be happy to share our learnings, but it also needs to be it's facilitated and supported by so many other players internally as well. So that is the thing I just want to say. And I don't know whether we formally start this panel discussion on placing India at the global level. Do we formally start?
We can start, sir. So if you have any opening views even on that, because that's a subject we are discussing first time in this conference over so many years, and a perfect timing as some of the institutions have already announced to go global. So I think we can start with your remarks on that as well.
Thank you once again. The subject for discussion is quite open in terms of what have we seen so far and what we have not seen so far across the globe. I know many of these jurisdictions have got their own USPs as well. So it is time for us to leverage on their developments, plus also bring our developments to the fore. Actually, I just want to take our audience back to the 2019 vision document that Reserve Bank had brought out on payment and settlement systems. And one of the action points or one of the highlights we have made there is the scope for us to actually enhance global outreach of our payment systems, including remittance services, through active participation and collaboration in regional and international fora, and of course, contributing to standard setting. I still remember I was part of the payment system activities in Reserve Bank of India when we extended the NEFT scheme to make outward remittances to Nepal. So Indo-Nepal remittance facility scheme was started almost a decade back. And I understand that, okay, the volumes are not picking up, but the scheme is available. Similarly, I do remember our interactions with the Bhutanese government and the regulator there to bring our check truncation and other electronic payment systems, including the national financial switch type of thing there, Bhutan financial switch and other developments which were made available in Bhutan. I understand that there also the systems are all working well. Of course, recently we have been in extensive discussion with the international standard setting bodies like the CPMI. I hope everybody knows about CPMI, the Committee on Payments and Market Infrastructures of the Bank for International Settlements, because they have a mandate from the G20 presidency that was in Saudi Arabia recently to actually facilitate the cross-border payments, and cross-border payments, not just the remittances, but the other small value payments as well. And the CPMI has been trying to engage in discussions with all the member countries, including India. We are also an active part of the group, and then trying to set up building blocks, identify building blocks which need to be cleared or overcome before we can see a better place for the cross-border payments. And they have identified some 17 building blocks. And I was discussing in one of the other events of the, you must have heard of the innovation hub that BIS has set up. And in one of the innovation hubs of Singapore, that activity they had on outreach in terms of better cross-border payment, India was invited to make a presentation on UPI. So I did make a presentation on our product, Unified Payments Interface. And I told them that in fact, UPI actually ticks most of the building blocks that you have identified. If you have identified 17, UPI ticks many of the building blocks because it is a latest payment product. It actually embraces the latest technology as well. And it uses API-based connectivity to bring many people together. It has fintechs and big techs also participating in it. The funds are all well secure because it's a bank-to-bank account transfer. I don't have to compromise my bank account because I can use something called as a BPA. I was just telling about the scalability and the nature of transactions being handled by UPI, including, I think now P2M is 40% and P2P is 60%. So you can see the increase in traction across not just individuals, but across the merchant segment as well. And I do also understand just before the pandemic started, somewhere in February, March, the general manager of the Bank for International Settlements, Mr. Augustine Carstens, had suggested that we can actually try and emulate these developments in global jurisdictions as well. And they were willing to lead. In fact, they were willing to also help us enter into, say, MOUs with different jurisdictions. And that was indeed very refreshing for us to hear from them that they want to take our products outside. And BIS is a organization with around 63 big countries participating. And if these initiatives were to be taken to the global level, it will be very, very useful. And I remember also a discussion we have been having with the BRICS setup. The BRICS Payment Task Force is there, and they are also very interested to see that the cross-border payments can be taken to the next level through bilateral and multilateral relationships. Sometimes we see that when we try to engage in discussions where multilateral fora is involved or money jurisdictions are there, you have to actually find out whether everybody is up to the same level or whether you can try to leverage on some of their systems without like looking at some of the other systems that are there in the other countries. It becomes a little difficult thing. So sometimes we have been suggesting that let us start with bilateral. Let us start with bilateral engagements. Let us then extend or expand that to multilateral arrangements. So that could probably be helpful, because we all know, I have been saying in the last couple of meetings as well, that India is the largest recipient of remittances globally. We have last year $83 billion coming in. Next year, again, the share will remain, although the quantum may come down a little bit because of the movement restrictions. But it does help us to concentrate on key corridors. One message that we have been trying to follow, maybe I can also suggest, is that if these corridors can be tapped, we have those half a dozen corridors, 1 dozen corridors where significant traction happens. So if those corridors can be leveraged upon to bring down the cost of payments and also make the payments faster, it will actually do everybody as a lot of good. And I'm also seeing that we have outbound transactions also happening up to around $7 billion. Even those corridors could be tracked as well. So it will be interesting. And of course, we have our domestic products, like I was mentioning, UPI. We have RuPay as a domestic card initiative. Our Indians, when they are traveling to various jurisdictions, it will be very nice for them to use the same UPI app or their mobile banking apps provided by Indian banks to make payments outside for merchant purchases or even for other discretionary payments. Like I know that NPCI has set up a subsidiary for international payments, NIPL. And I do understand that they are in discussions with a couple of governments like Singapore, like UAE, like South Korea, and many others. And those countries have actually set up these systems. And probably once it unlockdown completely happens and people start moving, so we can see people making seamless payments.
Yeah.
And I also want to make one point here that we have also, as a central bank, returned to many of the governments elsewhere, saying that we are willing to exchange and collaborate and offer our services or share our learning points with them. And we are bullish on many of the products that we have, which can be used in other jurisdictions. Because when we have looked at the payment system development in India, Sameerji will also accept that we have looked at interoperability as one prime pillar. We have safety, security, and efficiency. Of course, those are non-compromisable, but interoperability, when we look at right from the old ATM type of interoperability through NFS, or even the recent QR code related interoperability for UPI and Bharat QR, and these are actually our way of leveraging the ecosystem's facilities available. While we cannot adopt or accept every system that is available because that causes confusion in the minds of the users, we thought that the interoperability will pick up good. Of course, Bharat Bill Payment System has really seen this interoperability be taken to a very high next level as well. And when we are looking at certain security measures that are brought in, for example, like tokenization or contactless cards or even standing instructions, and recently the online dispute resolution requirement, we have not tried to like emulate just what is happening elsewhere. We are trying to customize that to suit our requirements as well. So I do appreciate the industry cribbing with us, saying that you have actually delayed the launch of these products because we had some solutions in mind, but you are bringing your own points of view, which is making us to revisit and align the model. So that is actually suiting us. And we also know that the systems and infrastructure that is available here is well suited to Indian culture, and if that is taken care of, I'm sure the world will also be a better place. And of
So
course,
it
you
would
will
be a
also.
perfect time probably to bring in Samir now. So Samir, I think I'm going to club 2 or 3 points up front for you. And like Sir said, that it's a painstaking work at the multiple institution level, and it's painstaking work for entrepreneurs like you who had to also slog for probably 10 plus year to reach where you are. Today's time, Samir, the whole entrepreneurial journey or a business journey is not about setting usually product and services for one geography. If you look at, let's say, any tech businesses, they are all stacked, architected around world as a market. I mean, obviously regulated, you have to do it a lot more micro. So I need your views on 3 or 4 things, and I want you to go all of them at one. One is that, what do you think about Indian business on a payment ecosystem going global? What kind of areas, product solutions you as an entrepreneur side? We also saw even RBI has solutions that want to take global, even NPCI has a solution. I'm sure entrepreneurs also have a lot many. What are the scope of those solutions, products, even the ones that you're doing? What kind of geographies do you think that could go in? And obviously, what kind of challenges that you see? So I want you to kind of cover all of this in maybe about 10 minutes or so. Yeah. Over to you.
Thanks, Naveen. Thank you, sir. Um, let me start with the first one. I think India is in a very unique place as far as the payments industry goes, and it's because in most sectors, the Indian internet market has sort of followed some global bigwigs, right? We've learned how e-commerce works out, ticketing works out, food tech works out, search works out, mapping works out. We've learned from others and tried to emulate. In the digital payment space, because there were very strong both banking and non-banking incumbents in the West and the East, the innovation on the smartphone side or mobile side, really outside of Africa with M-Pesa, I would say that's the exception almost, never really took off until India has arrived. And again, China has two very large wallet players, but India simultaneously has UPI, it has NEFT and RTGS for corporate payments, B2B payments. You got Visa, MasterCard, RuPay. So you got the global networks, you got the domestic networks, and you have 30, 40 odd wallets. And they're all simultaneously growing, right? It's a very unique market where all types of payment methods are exploding simultaneously. And I think it's the first time, I'm new to the industry, I've been here for about 5 years, but the first time that I'm seeing organic adoption of digital payments happening at scale. So I think Demon created an artificial boost. We all talked about how like people needed a money transfer solution, a bill payment solution. But during COVID, it's become more systemic, right? It's been almost 10 months of people preferring to have social distancing, pay using their phone. Like there was this very interesting tweet that I saw recently where someone was saying, ever since COVID has started and digital payment apps have really exploded, you don't find chillad on the road anymore. Right? It's a very pertinent thing. I mean, I remember growing up as kids, we used to find loose change everywhere. People always had coins. My kids don't know what coins look like because they've disappeared, at least in Bangalore. I think the world is trying to come to India, and digital payments is obviously one of the most, if not the like by far and away the most contested segment because of two reasons. One, India is doing it in a way that no one else has done before. There's nothing like UPI in terms of lowering barriers to entry, whether you're a domestic player or an international player. Second, there's market as India. Everyone keeps saying this is the last sort of really big, like billion-person market, right? So on the one hand, every major international company, whether it's a banking institute or rather payments company or a tech company, is entering India. So we're adding now about 100 million new users or customers to the payments systems every year now. And that number will only grow fast. Like it'll see a tipping point in my mind in 22. So we are like, this is like the telecom industry 10 years ago. So as an Indian entrepreneur, half the challenge is just staying abreast of all the changes in the market forces, consumer adoption, scaling your systems and dealing with all the regulatory changes as well, right? Because there are new products, there are things like a new NUE will come in, new networks are coming in, it's all happening, and new competitors, obviously. So on the one hand, you want to make sure that as a homegrown startup, you don't lose focus and you do your best to be the biggest and best that you can in India. On the other, so myself, for example, I've recently joined a very interesting initiative called the Mojaloop Foundation. Now, this was started by the Gates Foundation early on, but a lot of international companies have joined, and they're I know, for example, talking to NPCI as well about collaboration. They're talking to Visa and Mastercard, and a lot of like global players to introduce solutions, say for Africa or developing markets. Now, when they look at Indian startups like us, they're saying, "Hey, can you help us understand how to build scalable solutions that are cheap at scale?" Right? So India is both the ground zero for innovation, but also the ground zero for market share or market growth. And that makes it an interesting conundrum. We wanted to enter 2-3 other markets this year. We spoke to our board and our investors, and timing seemed right. Then one after the other. First, COVID happened, so you can't fly to another market and even assess the market. So that got artificially deferred. Second, because COVID happened, the Indian markets exploded. I mean, we are seeing UPI growth again, right? Post lockdowns, at a base of 1 billion transactions a month, we've doubled in 4 months. That's it. It took us, 10-15 years, as Sir said, to get to 1 billion of anything. And suddenly you double in 4 months and it's still growing. So systems are bursting at the seams. We all are trying to scale at the same time. So if you ask me today, exactly 12 months later, do I want to go international next year? Absolutely want to. I think we've got learning. And I think the other thing is really waiting for UPI to start going international because of the interoperability aspect that Sir mentioned. I think UPI is very, very unique, and I see other regulators starting to force interoperability. China's done that recently with their wallets, the 2 major players. But I think there will be some global standards on interoperability that will emerge over the next 5 to 10 years, especially around things like remittance. Right? Blockchain was supposed to be that answer, where like if blockchain is used universally, then there's a common standard. But I don't think it was the right answer for different reasons. So I think standards will emerge through the central banks, and operators like us will come in there and hopefully sort of stitch the market. I think in terms of sectors, I actually think that as far as smartphone-led markets are concerned, other than China, which is already at scale with its homegrown plays, I actually think the world is our oyster. I think Europe has nothing like a PhonePe or a Paytm. It has, the US today doesn't. If you see, Google Pay has just announced its entry into the US market after announcing that they've also reached that 250 million user mark in India. WhatsApp Pay hasn't entered in the US market. They've entered in India. So I think even the homegrown players of these markets will enter their own home markets later. So I think we'll also want to enter by 22 if we can.
There's an interesting question, Samir. While you're covering that, I think you can just summarize the answer for that as well. It says India is actually you talked about it. India is model payment ecosystem with multiple infrastructure requirement. And what are the key elements that we should focus on to go global or create global competitive advantages? So I think part of it you spoke, but I thought maybe remaining second you could cover.
Yeah, no, and this is the discussion we're having with NPCI actively. I think we have an opportunity to define the standard, the global standard of interoperability, but that's a very big leap because that would mean almost quasi open sourcing the UPI stack. I'm very curious to see, obviously, how the NUE thing plays out in India, because the word that everyone's really intrigued by is interoperability of a new network with UPI or NPCI. There's 2 ways that plays out. Either the standard is public or the code is public. The standard is public, interesting, but not as sort of disruptive. But if the UPI model is almost operating like public code repositories, then the global adoption could be very accelerated. And I think in tandem with India's view on MDR, and I think those 2 do go hand in hand as an operator, to be honest. I'm glad that NIPL is structured as for profit, as I understand it, because that's one discussion we've had, even when we talk at Mojaloop and other areas. Even the not for profit entities are not advocating a zero MDR model in any of the markets I've seen. So I know both are evolving, both are controversial, but I think those 2 in tandem will dictate how India's role in the global market sort of plays out.
Interesting. So coming to you now, so there are 2 or 3 questions from a regulatory aspect. One is we talked about FinTech Innovation Hub. So one is that how can that help, let's say, even payment entities to participate and grow? That was the one question. The another one is, sir, various central bank are now looking at more risk-based approach to regulate. Where are we on that? And lastly, which I'm adding from my side, sir, is that can we see some sort of a regulatory relationships at the country level, which you already talked about, helping, let's say, a licensed entity here to move to other? Like in Europe, you used to see that across the Europe, you have one license, you just go and register in another geography, you could start business. Can we expect that in some kind of time frame with help of regulators? Can industry players licensed here go seamlessly in another license zone, another geography? Can there something of that sort happen, sir? Those are 3 quick things, sir, for you. We have about 4 minutes left, but I've been given good news that we can extend by another 5. So we have about 10 minutes.
Thank you, and it was very interesting to hear the views of Samirji. Also, one point I just want to also add when we are talking about risk is to ensure that the cybersecurity risks do not get exacerbated when more networks and more endpoints get added. So that is one thing we are very, very keen. Even when we are talking to the other jurisdictions now, when the issue of risk-based regulation coming in, our one point has been that if you have a network and we have network, connecting the two could be a better approach. And while we should leave these network-to-network connectivity to be handled by the entities here, the broad central bank to central bank cooperation or even the government to government cooperation is what we can enter into. And subsequently, based on the comfort and the technological and technical integration, the other entities can take the discussions forward. So that is one approach that could work out, because ultimately the central banks and the governments, if they facilitate, the entities will also, as you were mentioning, probably getting a passporting right. If you have a license in one, whether you can easily extend to other. Because nowadays, one of the other things I am also seeing is that, for example, if there is an entity operating in another jurisdiction, they're asking also us for inputs about some of the people who are part of that entity. So they're asking us from a central bank side as to how this entity is, according to you, doing in your jurisdiction. Are you happy, or do you have something to share? In fact, before some of the jurisdictions wanted to start some activities, also they have asked, what are your learning experiences about this process? Maybe interoperability, maybe allowing big techs. So that is the way people are looking up to, and it's now very easy to exchange a mail or to participate in these standard setting body discussions to have connectivity being established. So that way the world is becoming smaller. Of course, it will be very nice to have licensing and other regulations being made simpler, but then you have to give it to them also, because they have their own restrictions, they have their own regulations, and we have to take care of that part. While we can only facilitate by saying that yes, this is the manner in which we have done it and we are seeing our entities behave, but it's a call they have to take, because ultimately the endpoint compromise or this ring fencing of institutions is each one's responsibility. While our people may be global, but we would also like our systems to be safe. And like Samirji was mentioning about this 1 billion to 2 billion increase in 4 months, we also get a sudden scare when the volumes are increasing so much, and the technical declines we have been reading in the last couple of days in the newspapers about technical declines equally increasing. So if the systems need to be scaled up, if the people are actually having adequate resources to do this, only then they should go for this upscaling or globalization. It's not that it's everybody's game. You have to first be clear about having your both feet on the ground here, and then you try to extend your arms elsewhere. Otherwise, it's going to be tough. And then probably if the regulator feels that the overreach is too much, or the outreach needs to be curtailed, somebody may have to come and say, hey, wait. Let us see some more demonstration happening in terms of your capabilities, then only you can. So those things are going to be something interesting. I don't want to comment on the umbrella entity, because lots of things are being told and we still have time for things to settle down. So let me leave it at that. But I am sure of one thing, that the world is going to be our playground. So that's very, very sure going forward. And I like the song by Mikey McCleary, which says that there is always a space at the table. There is always a new game to play. There's always a new friend to make. And we are changing every day. So I really look forward to that. Of course, as I said, your 4 hours are very good, but I also want to add in this particular discussion context 2 or 3 more hours. One is responsible, responsive, risk-based outreach or reach out. So that is what I think. And in the process, if India can get wonderful revenues, nothing like that. So 1 more hour, let it also generate revenues for us. So it will be very good for everyone.
Sir, I was wondering that is the entities being forced to go global because of the revenue issue? But anyway, that's on a lighter note. On the additional note on a cyber side, sir, At the PCI, we're going to talk to you soon, and with the help of all the entities, including Samir's company, we're trying to create a fraud analytics group, which is actually looking into some of the areas which are still untouched. And there are serious issues of communication between stakeholders. So we'll actually reach out to you with a detailed paper on that and take your guidance. One question we will go to you, Samir. I mean, we know world is a playground, and everybody is thinking global entrepreneur like today doesn't think just India alone. Of course, India is a large market, but what are the areas that we could work with and being serving here with the regulators better so that we can make it, let's say, much faster, much better, much bigger?
I actually agree. I actually think trust and safety is by far and away, at least for us, the only real barrier to entry besides technology scaling to get to 1 billion Indians on payments. And I'll say this, I'm really excited by the recent TRAI ruling on SMS-based fraud, for example. Is the first time Paytm took the lead. We acknowledged it publicly and we joined them. I do think between PCI or industry bodies and the regulator, I do think India can set a precedent by demanding ownership or responsibility for things like social media related fraud. Like there's very consistent patterns of fraud. We keep pushing for takedown notices. We keep running to courts, but courts are a very slow process. It's like, content piracy on YouTube back in the day, 10 years ago. Ultimately, damages had to be assessed in the billions until Google got serious. Today on a Twitter or a Facebook, wherever I go, if I search for PhonePe, all I see is hundreds of pages of fake CS numbers. And the burden can't just be on me alone. And I think here, with the regulators' help, I think we need to introduce a penalty-based system for participants in the large economy to curtail fraud, because I think fraud is the enemy of early adopters of digital payments. I think that's the one real area of participation, and I think we can set some global firsts in behavior shaping here.
And what more from going global for entities? I think sir wanted to say something. Yes, sir.
No, I just wanted to mention that we have recently set up this Central Payment Fraud Information Registry. We are getting a lot of hits in terms of the reports, but we would actually request every stakeholder to contribute by way of whatever they are seeing, both actual and suspected or alleged frauds as well, so that we can try to make a sense out of it. We'll be very glad to participate with this. For some areas which were mentioned, if you can look at the benchmarking exercise we did with around 21 countries on 41 parameters, we have said areas where we probably are not leaders, we are moderators, or we are moderate. I'm not bringing moderator here. We're moderate or low in terms of our achievements. So that could be some areas which you can look at. I just missed one point. I just wanted to come in was about the innovation hub. One question was taken. You have taken a question last recent just now. The Innovation Hub has just been set up. We have highlighted in our press release as to what are the areas we expect the Innovation Hub to do. And the Governing Council has been also announced with Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan as the chairperson. So it's going to be an interesting future in terms of what innovations will come in and what are all the areas in which we can look at. Of course, a couple of activities are globally also being talked about, like for example the BIS talks about CBDCs and DLT and blockchain, etc. We could also look at many things here in the Indian context, and we are not short of people like PhonePe and Samir Seem, etc., who can bring us enough number of ideas. So how we can scale it up and how we can actually make proofs of concept will be very interesting. So let us wait for the RBI Innovation Hub to settle down, and we will have a lot of interaction with you all, with maybe the academia. Everybody is being part of the hub. So it's for the financial sector. As Samirji was asking about certain other regulators having certain other issues, this innovation hub is of this financial sector as a whole. So the regulatory sandbox has thrown us some good inputs. So this innovation hub also will definitely do a lot of good for the ecosystem.
Sir, I would say that the fraud registry system that you just mentioned, I think it would be helpful, sir, if we do a separate, and though it's slightly digressing from the core theme, with all the players, one workshop, where probably the whole framework and what all we're doing, I think enough information to the stakeholder is not yet available. That while you launched it, but probably we could ask separately Gaurav to reach out and then set that up and participate and make it successful. Because I still keep hearing in various discussion, people wanting to aggregate the data, contribute. I've been telling them that let's have one RBI as the hub where all the data go. We should only facilitate rest of the activity. So I will do that separately. Samir, coming to you, still I'm asking the same question. What are the real challenges to entrepreneurs to take business global in payments? Let's talk about that. If you were to go global in certain areas, what are the things that kind of you think needs to be still fixed?
See, Fix again, I'll be honest, it really depends on the model, right? If it were remittances, for example, that model relies on central bank alliances itself. I can't expand myself. But if I were operating a model, for example, like a PayPal, which used to be sort of linking instruments or a wallet model,
Yeah.
I can go global. I mean, I think the RBI has made life a lot easier over the last few years by allowing experiments
Yeah.
for wallets to actually have partnerships abroad, for UPI to start extending abroad. I think the real challenge right now is more on the corporate structuring side for private startups. That is one thing that we are still grappling with. And that's not related to our regulator, but that's more in Delhi. We are seeing, I think, at a market level, a lot of Indian startups not being able to or not choosing to incorporate headquarters here so that they can play the international game. And it shouldn't have to be that complex. I think that's something that will play out in the next 2 or 3 years. Because other international companies headquarter in their home market and then expand out. We have to play this hybrid game, which is very awkward.
True. So, sir, coming to you last for some closing remark and one question, sir, that as Indian entities, and you said even RBI is open to support, let's say, global outreach and at least share our learning, because India is clearly a leader in payments. What would be your concern, or what were the, let's say, 2 or 3 key things that you would want entities to be cautious? Because let's say they are doing well here, but let's say if some entity goes abroad, they do something there, it concerns you. What are the things that you would be cautious? At least what are the, let's say, immediate flags that you would like to raise for entities to look at? And then we'll close in about 3 minutes.
Yeah, one thing, if you see in Indian context, we have been a lot more accommodative to the mistakes of entities which may not be allowed elsewhere. So while our penalties are typically not very high in terms of the action that could have been taken elsewhere, it can be unlimited. So those things we have to be very careful. Second is about grievance redressal. See, we have plenty of grievances being thrown out by the people for different activities in the payments chain. And generally, we have found that it can be much, much better than what it is now. And once we go 24/7 in terms of global systems available, etc., the redressal mechanism also needs to be shored up. We have a digital ombudsman, we have internal ombudsman here, we have the banking ombudsman also taking up the cases. But it is not enough. We have to scale up your grievance redressal machinery, and probably the overseas regulators may be less accommodative because it's an Indian entity coming in there. So you'll have to be much more prepared to handle all those issues. And those can be actually damaging your reputation back in India as well if you get hit badly there. So while we can look at the globalization and our interest for people to go abroad, we should also be taking, as I was saying, risk-based effort and approach. No? We should also set your own ring fencing mechanisms and alternatives to take care of your base activity here. So that's what I said. Two connectivities are always good, but please ensure that more endpoints doesn't lead to more risk in our ecosystem. And probably then we also become answerable, because once we have allowed you to go overseas for your activities, then we are also answerable to the other regulators as well. So we need to take care of that. As I said, one is about cyber, second is about this grievance redressal, third, as you were mentioning, about frauds. While we can learn from the other geographies, but I feel we have enough history with us, enough data with us. So let us make good analysis and maybe use this opportunity to tighten our system so much so that fraudsters will find it difficult to take our system for a ride. So I am very hopeful about the outreach of our systems. If they can handle Indian geographies, they can handle many other geographies quite well. So I am very, very positive on that. But again, it has to be a collaborative effort. Like you are saying about the PCI, you are saying about the entities. I am also looking at the SRO coming in. So they all can sit together and try to bring our ecosystem to a very high level of acceptance globally. I am very excited. So I am sure the entities like PhonePe and PCI and I heard something like Soham Bharat being mentioned as the introduction. Those people are all going to bring globalization into our fold as well. Thank you for making me part of these discussions. I've enjoyed it. Of course, we can discuss offline on other issues as well.
Of course, sir. No, I really appreciate all of you taking time out, and Vasudevanji, Samir, I mean, thanks a lot for sharing all your views. I think this is a very interesting topic. We could keep going on for another 3-4 hours, considering all the knowledge and the ideas that we have on the table. But as we said, that it's 2 days. Idea is to just put things on the table for next whole year to keep discussing and keep growing Indian digital payment ecosystem. So I thank you both a lot for time taken and sharing your views. Thank you very much, sir. We'll all have a good day watching this 2 interesting days of all this content. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much, and have a great time. Samirji, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Amir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you to the esteemed panel. Thank you. Stay tuned.